All right, today we are diving deep into a really fascinating psychological technique that comes from neuro-linguistic programming. It's called personal anchoring. And according to the source material we're looking at, this is a method designed to create, well, profound intimacy by linking your presence to someone's absolute peak emotional states.
Now that is a statement, isn't it? This is really the core idea we're exploring today. We're not just talking about being wanted or even loved. This is about positioning yourself as a fundamental, almost biological requirement for his happiness. It's a pretty bold claim, so let's break down exactly how it's supposed to work.
So what does it actually mean to become irreplaceable? Well, according to our source, this is all about completely transforming your role within a relationship. The idea is to shift from just being a participant in his life to becoming really an essential part of his entire emotional world.
The concept here is what the source calls a unique frequency. What does that mean? It means forging these permanent, positive connections between you and his best feelings. Moments of intense joy, pride, or pleasure. And once that link is made, your presence, your touch, even just your voice, it starts to have an effect on him that is uniquely yours, something that literally can't be duplicated.
Okay, so the big question is, how does this actually work? Let's get into the mechanics of it, the actual step-by-step process behind this powerful concept of psychological anchoring.
So first things first, we have to understand what an anchor is. Just think of it like a psychological trigger. It's a very specific sensory input, something he sees, hears, smells, or feels that you intentionally connect to one of his most intense positive emotions. You're basically creating a little shortcut in his brain, a direct path to a powerful positive feeling.
The process laid out in the material breaks down into these 3 very clear steps. First, you've got to identify the perfect moment, what's called a peak intensity state. Now, this could be that feeling of pure euphoria he gets after a huge win at work, or it could be, say, the peak of sexual climax. At that exact moment, you introduce your unique stimulus. That's the anchor. And then, and this part is key, you repeat it. In that repetition, it is absolutely crucial. For an anchor to really stick, to become permanent and automatic, the source claims that this process has to be repeated in almost identical situations about 10 times. So, according to this theory, this isn't a one-and-done thing. Consistency is everything.
All right, now we're getting into what the source describes as the most potent and maybe the most provocative application of this whole technique, sexual anchoring. This is where the idea is used to create a unique and powerful bond, which the author actually calls a sexual monopoly.
So let's look at the specific example they give us to make this crystal clear. The idea is to use a very distinct, maybe brightly colored hair tie. You would use this specific hair tie and only this one every single time you perform oral intimacy, tying your hair back with it right as the moment begins.
You see what's happening here? Through that consistent repetition, right at his peak moment of pleasure, that simple little hair tie is completely transformed. It stops being just an accessory. In his subconscious mind, it becomes a powerful trigger, a symbol that is now hopelessly intertwined with feelings of ecstasy, arousal, and deep affection for you.
And this quote right here, this really illustrates the intended end goal. The theory is that if you were ever with another woman, the absence of that specific trigger, your unique key, would make the entire experience feel off, incomplete. His brain, which has been conditioned to associate that peak pleasure with your anchor, would just sense that a crucial element is missing.
But, and this is a big but, like any powerful tool, this comes with some serious risks. So it is crucial to understand the pitfalls. The source points out 2 main dangers: accidentally creating negative anchors and using triggers that are just too common to be effective.
You have to remember, your brain is just an association machine. It doesn't really distinguish between good and bad anchors. The material warns that if you, for example, consistently greet a man with complaints or stress the second he walks in the door, you are unintentionally anchoring that feeling of homecoming to negativity and anxiety.
So how do you avoid that trap? Well, the advice is to intentionally make your presence a sanctuary. Save the difficult or stressful conversations for a more neutral time and place. The goal here is to make sure that the primary anchors associated with you, with your presence, are consistently tied to peace, to pleasure, and to admiration.
Now, what about the second big pitfall? Let's say you're trying this and it just doesn't seem to be working. Well, according to the source, the most likely reason is a lack of uniqueness. For a trigger to be truly potent, it absolutely has to be exclusive to you and the intimate world you share together.
As you can see here, it's all about uniqueness. An effective anchor is specific. Think of a signature scent that he only ever smells on you. A failed anchor, on the other hand, is diluted. It's something like a top 40 song he might hear on the radio or a super popular perfume he could smell on anyone, anywhere. That just breaks the exclusive link.
So, after all this, what is the ultimate outcome when this technique is mastered? The source describes it as nothing less than a fundamental shift in your role. You literally move from being a participant in his life to becoming the architect of his emotional reality.
This quote pretty much encapsulates the entire philosophy, doesn't it? It's the culmination of the whole process. The point where your carefully installed anchors make your presence not just something he prefers, but a perceived necessity for his own sense of well-being and joy.
And these are the powerful results the source talks about. By consciously installing these positive anchors deep in his subconscious, the theory is that you gain this incredible ability to influence his emotional state. You can soothe him with an established anchor of peace, ignite his passion with a well-placed anchor of pleasure, and ultimately build what the author calls a fortress of intimacy.
And that really brings us to our final and pretty provocative thought. What we've laid out here is a blueprint for a very deliberate form of psychological influence. So the final question it leaves us with is a powerful one to think about. In your relationships, do you see yourself as just a passive participant or as the conscious architect of the reality you both share?
You can find the electronic version of book She Who Awakens by Alina Chamberlain at wishforlove.org.